Phase 2 of NA HGC started with 2 hype roster swaps, Goku to Roll20 and CAF and K1 to Gale esports. GFE may have had the more immediate success, but it's Roll20 who is looking to be stronger by the end of Phase 2. Today is their biggest test after months of work and dread. It is going to be a good one.
It is absolutely going to be an amazing match here that we have today. Possibly the best in all of Part 2. It's kind of hyped to be, and maybe even that of all of Phase 2. But the one thing that we do know, as you said, Roll20 looks far and above the rest of North America, and it seems like the only opponent left has got to be Gale to say otherwise.
Let's check out the standings because this match matters a ton to both of these teams. Team Freedom actually sits at the absolute top of North America, and the winner of this match gets to join them, which makes it scary for the loser of this match, Dread.
It is extremely important for the loser of this match when looking at Roll20 and Gale in the head-to-head. Gale esports currently sits 1 win over Roll20 when looking at what happened in Phase 2 Part 1. So Phase 2 Part 2, the series we see unfold today, Roll20 has an opportunity to go dead even. Because Roll20 has been absolutely unstoppable when it comes to wins. 94% win rate so far, 15-1 when it comes to game wins overall. They're just dominating in part number 2. And so that means they win when it comes to overall match wins, which come after the head-to-head. So that is essentially, it is dire for Gale esports to win the series, making it to where they will win the head-to-head. And more importantly, if they do end up getting a 3-way tie at the top, which is possible, they will pull ahead and get outside of the playoff range. It's complex, but it's seriously life and death almost for these teams. It secures a ticket to BlizzCon or playing for your tournament lives.
Yeah.
It is colossal.
Yes, this match is everything to these two teams, especially because after today, everyone will have played the same amount of matches, which means all three of those teams, all of the teams, only have 1 match left, and that is next weekend. The loser of this match basically has to rely on one of the top 3 to be upset, or one of the top 2 to be upset, for them to even get that chance of joining them and claiming one of the top 2 spots of the standings. But we have 2 matches today, so let's take a look at the schedule for not only NA, but EU. And I have to mention, in Korea, MVP Black did beat L5, so L5 and Tempest are very close to maybe having to play a tiebreaker match for one of the HGC final spots. But over in Europe, Fnatic cleanly swept through the Zealots, and congratulations to Team Dignitas. Their victory over Team Liquid makes sure that they will be attending HGC finals at BlizzCon. Later, Tempo Storm versus Even in Death. But first, the hype match of the weekend for North America, we've got Gale esports versus Roll20.
Gale esports and Roll20, man. It's just going to be, again, Roll20, the dominance that they've displayed, there has been a little bit of struggle on the side of Gale as of late, and it's just kind of, what version of Gale do we end up getting? Do we still see that dominance out of Roll20? Because the teams that Roll20 took the top of North America, Team Freedom and Tempo Storm, that was weeks 1 and 2. They've kind of had a lull in terms of skill of their opponent for a while, so maybe that's a bit of a bubble we'll see kind of break here today in this series.
Well, let's get to it. Let's hear from K1 Pro and Goku about this match.
I believe Gale Force's strength has been the uses of their globals. I feel like in any team in North America, they use their globals the best, while their weaknesses is overall just standard play and playing smaller maps such as Tomb of the Spider Queen. We've been working for this for like almost 2 weeks. Like, we were already thinking ahead for GFE after like I think our first 2-week matches, if anything. It's pretty exciting knowing that they know that threat and they don't want to get 0-3. They might pull off some cheese, I bet, but even if Gale Force decide to do boot camp, we already have a plan against them, which I'm pretty confident will work, and it will result into, like, I think just decimating them, to be honest.
Roll20, they run a lot of the same stuff, honestly. So you can really gain an edge over studying a team like that. They have been expanding their pool lately a bit, but I think they still have like 2 to 3 styles overall that they just do way better than everything else. And if we could just keep them off doing what they do best, I think we have a good shot to beat them.
Both of these teams feel like they know each other and their strategies pretty well, but on the one hand, Gale Force has been boot camping for this moment here, and on the other, Roll20 guys has been planning strategies for weeks for this match. As soon as they finish the first 2 weeks, they have been setting their eyes on this match right now. It is going to be so awesome. I can't wait. But we have to talk about how the teams got here, because they have taken very different paths to get to being in the same spot in standings. Roll20, you already talked about theirs, but Gale Force, they had to reverse sweep Lag Force yesterday, and they had 2 tough losses last week to Freedom and Space Station Gaming.
Yeah, Gale Force esports, and honestly, they aren't the only team sitting at the top of North America that this statement could be said, but consistency is just not there. And so now to face a formidable opponent like Roll20, you've got to kind of be second-guessing yourself. At least if you're a fan of Gale Force esports, your confidence has got to be wavering a smidge here, because they have been, especially after yesterday's games against Lag Force, unable to fulfill the role that they kind of assumed after that role swap at part number 2.
Yeah, everyone talked about the consistency of Gale Force, and then right when that started happening were those 2 losses. But speaking of fans of Gale Force, let's check in with the top fans, the top cheers for Gale Force. We've got Gladman sitting at the very top with a big margin over the rest of the cheers for Gale Force. A lot of Gale Force fans, though, but there are so many Roll20 fans, too. A lot of fans of both of these teams. These 2 are in the top of cheered overall for all of NA teams across HGC. And Gladman at the top here. This is going to be a very difficult match for Gladman.
Yeah, you know, talk about some cognitive dissonance throughout the entire series here at Gladman, but I'm sure he'll feel fine. You know, he's got an epic mount to be able to ride in the middle of the game. We're working our way on to, I believe, the Deadly Chaos Lizard is the name of the 3rd one. So, you know, he's got to feel, you know, good for the contributions, but also torn because, again, there always has to be a loser here at HGC.
Well, let's see who loses the first match. At least we're looking at Braxis holdout for game 1. I wondered if this would be the ban for Roll20, but spending weeks on figuring out how to beat your opponent kind of makes you think that maybe Roll20 would just be planning on Gale Force to pick this right out of the gates. We've got bans on Infernal Shrines. That seems to be the new favorite ban for Gale Force. They banned it yesterday versus Lag Force 2. And then the normal ban of Roll20 for Cursed Hollow.
So Braxis holdout for Gale Force esports. They are a very dominant team on this map. We have talked about it time and time again. One of the few times North America has seemed to hold its own against some of the European teams is when Gale Force was able to play this at the Western Clash, but it's Roll20. And again, you talked about it, this has got to be expected. There is no surprise that Gale Force has selected this for the very first map. So, though this does give an edge to Gale Force and the prowess they have displayed in the past, by no means do I give them a huge margin of error like I do against maybe other teams.
Because Gale Force had to reverse sweep Lag Force, they had to show a lot of different kinds of playstyles. We saw their double support Valo with a double warrior or Illidan. We saw the Morales Vikings composition on Cursed Hollow. Obviously, Cursed Hollow was not to be expected versus Roll20 since that's Roll20's standard ban. But then we even saw a melee deathball type of composition on Sky Temple. Are there any strategies left in the bag for Gale Force versus Roll20? Roll20 haven't played it all this weekend. But then again, maybe the strategies that Gale Force employed yesterday versus Lag Force are going to make Roll20 rethink some things about what they were planning. We find out now.
And without seeing Roll20 play yet, we've got to be bringing to light a very big question here, and that is, where does the Chromie land for Prismaticism after the huge nerfs? Abraxas holdout is a great map for that, and also the high Ariel pick kind of leads to either a major double support or, again, a Chromie rotation here. I do not expect Roll20 to pick the Chromie, but it is something we've got to be asking just because her, I don't know, nerf change, it's still yet to really kind of be displayed here at HGC. And we're just blasting right on through this draft.
Well, I think Gale Force already feels really good because they got Falstad Dahaka. They got 2 major globals for the strategy that seems to be hitting home for Gale Force now on Braxis. And versus a double support style composition, having these globals who can rotate around and get things done on the map has got to feel really good for Gale Force already. But what I am looking at now is the one team I think that, or I thought would not double support and buy into the double support that everyone else was Roll20. I cannot believe we are seeing this double support of Roll20.
I am a little surprised to see Roll20 pick it up, but this is one of the few maps where I didn't expect it to die out. It's a very lane-focused map with long, sustaining fights around a major objective. double support does stand out on a map like Braxis. So I want to see how far does it go for Roll20.
Okay.
This is game 1. Do we see it on things like, I know it's banned out, but maps Curse-esque, right? Where you don't get as much map pressure, the objective fight isn't as long. But I agree with you. I did not expect Roll20 to be that team indulging into the double support like some of the rest of the world has. We do
Garage ban for Gale Force, taking away one of the potential warriors. Probably we're going to see Gale Force then get ETC. Seems like those two are the favorites of a lot of NA teams, but especially Roll20. But there's also the Muradin to consider, and nobody's picked that up yet. Muradin is the best for backdooring, although with a crowd surfer, ETC could do a pretty good job of that too.
Yeah, ETC has made a bit of a name for himself on Braxis because of that crowd surfer and the global opportunity. I mean, I'm surprised to see him not picked up, but if we do end up seeing him selected for the series, I hope to see him lessen to the solo stage dive focus and a bit more team fight oriented. It has felt like it lacked the punch necessary whenever we see that hero picked in that area.
Oh, there's a surprise tank.
But it doesn't even matter. ETC is going to be banned out. You think there's a surprise warrior on the side of Roll20
Just
since the Garrosh, the ETC's gone, and you can assume?
Not like a huge surprise, not like, oh my gosh, we're going to all of a sudden play, I don't even, like a Sonya solo warrior, right? But it's enough that I think that would have been
like
a surprise to Gale Force, the Dibbles. I've heard of something else. We'll see if that comes out here. But we've got Greymane and a new Barak
We
to
got
start.
some juicy top secret strats here, Gillyweed. I'm ready for it. Muradin, Chromie, still bust out the Chromie. The Muradin sticking to the norm, so no wild picks for either side here. But the Chromie for Prismaticism, I am so excited to see what he can make happen here with this new hero. Again, she is essentially, I mean, uncapped in terms of potential, but hindered in terms of her strength into the early and mid game like she was before. And now sitting with a double support composition, there's a lot on those little shoulders of Chromie.
Well, if there was anybody that I would put hope into that he could make things happen with that Chromie, it's Prismaticism. He is right now 8-0 in Part 2 on his Chromie. Some insane stats all around for Prismaticism, honestly. He averages 0.2 deaths per game out of those 15 games, which I did the math. It puts him at 3 deaths total in all of Part 2, which is already nuts. No deaths on Nazebo, Leeming, or Tychus, and he's played 2 games each of those.
So you're saying he's pretty good?
Pretty good.
He can play the game. Yeah,
he's pretty good.
Yeah, he knows how to fling the spells around. He knows what to do to make the things happen here. Gale Force is going to lock in Lucio as the last pick in solo support here. No cross supporting for him. Does have the Dahaka and the Cocoon, or excuse me, the false set with the Gus and the Cocoon out of a new Barak to maybe buy a bit of time necessary in case things get hairy here into the team fight. And then, of course, the long, sustaining team fight composition that Roll20 opted into.
What's the laning setup for Gale Force?
Gale
or
Force,
for not Gale Force, Roll20, because we've got double support, double ranged, and then Muradin.
You are correct. This is a little bit kind of kitty-wampus here. So then to make up for that, I think it's got to be a 2-1-2. You absolutely have to. There's no way you can run the double support trifecta in the same manner that you could, and nobody is a strong enough individual solo laner. Muradin is the most outstanding. So I think you can probably expect that it's going to be an Ariel Vala in one aspect, maybe bottom. It really doesn't matter at that point. And then the Chromie Uther holding their own while Muradin is just doing his thing. The old ring around the rosy, musical chairs of Braxis holdout.
We'll see how Muradin does, Justin's Muradin does with the musical chairs. It is very interesting to see that Roll20, a team that has Goku, that has put a lot of emphasis in the solo laning, one of the most emphasis maybe of any North American team in having Goku, has drawn that back now. Goku may be playing, is it going to be Goku Uther?
I think so. It's interesting. So this also comes down to what double support is the strongest in North America should alter. We can generally judge the thought process of how good double support is depending on which support he's actually playing in this game. Because if you think, much like when Ariel was the key to the double support, then the guy flexing into the support role should never be your main support. It should always be on the consistent Ariel. So if they think double support's here to stay and one of those two is absolute must, he will be on whatever one that is. So you can actually learn before even seeing the second draft, just purely based on who Goku's playing.
Well, when Gale Force esports was playing it yesterday, it was Akaface who played Ariel, and then K1 Pro who was playing Uther. Let's see if it remains the same as we get into Game 1 on Braxis Holdout between Gale Force esports and Roll20.
Gale Force esports in the blue here on Braxis Holdout. We've got Fan on the false head. Mike Udall was on that Dahaka. King Caffeine on the Anu Barak. K1 Pro on Greymane, and on the support role, Akaface on Lucio.
For Roll20 esports in the red, Glaurung will be playing Vala, Justing playing Muradin. After that, Goku playing Uther. We've got Prismaticism playing Chromie. And finally, Ariel will be played by Buds.
2-1-2 laning situation already being displayed here for Roll20, sticking that Chromie and Uther up on top. So nothing surprising here. They are actually doing exactly what I was suggesting that they would most likely do here. It's not going to give them a big upper hand. A lot of this is going to be stopping the bleeding of where Gale Force applies pressure. Roll20 will then send the Murden into that lane to be able to backdoor when necessary, and then hopefully the duo support damage dealer gets so much done onto those front walls that Roll20 is the one who comes out on top. That generally is going to be the thought process. Obviously, there are a couple of wild variables, flights, teleports, things going on that could change that all up for Roll20.
The laning situation of Roll20 is pretty locked unless they switch the 2s up, depending on where Gale Force shows. But for Gale Force, there are so many options because they have this double global setup with Dahaka and Falstad. For now, we're seeing Falstad in the bottom lane. We may see some additional changes come in once we know where, or once they know where all the members of Roll20 are at, trying to switch things up. We know that Gale Force likes to be very fluid with their rotations and try to always have the upper hand, especially once the beacons start, and just slowly count up in beacon progress until they can get the max with heroic abilities at the same time.
Yeah, that thought process and kind of strategy that Gale Force traditionally goes for is rather successful with that double global. If you think about it, it kind of makes it to where every fight you take, if you're on the opponent side, you have to kind of realize that every fight in theory is going to be a 4 versus 5 always, and you can't change the outcome. And then your thought process has to be, well, and why I say that is because one obviously can get the teleport in, but what you normally do when you see that is you go, well then I can split push elsewhere. But you fail to realize that if one global is in that area and the global teleported top, the other one can always get the experience in the other lane. You aren't gaining anything. So you need to make advantages happen that aren't going through letting your opponent adjust off that double global play. And whenever you see that resource, you go, I have 45 seconds where I do suddenly no longer have to fear that. I have to be proactive. It's a very safe strategy, and it's oftentimes why when double globals, triple globals, I almost never go, this comp can't win, because it is easy to make those things happen. It's very forgiving. But on the other side, if you're pressured, suddenly those globals are a problem. You have to initiate this exact second if the opponent can apply that pressure. And I expect Roll20 to be that team as we're about to get back into Braxis.
One thing that will be able to help Roll20 out is that Glaurung is building back into a Hungering Arrow style of build, getting Monster Hunter. He may be able to quickly get some mercenary camps to pressure out and stave off the bleeding of where Gale Force is pushing. But now the brunt of Gale Force's composition has been shown in the top lane. Roll20 can now see this. Having Prismaticism where there's a lot of members of Gale Force is nice because he can try to keep stacking up his Sandblast.
And this is exactly what we expected. Gale Force to try and apply as much pressure as they can with their 4-man, get this front wall taken out. Roll20 is responding with the pressure down below and now adjusting. He tries to stop the bleeding, backdoor the objective whenever it's going to spawn, and he is just going to make Gale Force essentially the timer of effectiveness that they can get through the macro. It is limited severely, maybe down 15 seconds every time because of the rotations he can make thanks to that Dwarf Toss and backdooring the shrines, which we've talked about so many times. It is the reason Murden is a staple on a map like Braxis Holdout.
I'm so glad that we see Prismaticism as win rate there.
47.
KDA is 47. Yeah, that's because that's 0.2 deaths per game average in part 2. Well, I'm looking at his stacks. He's already sitting at 15, 2 minutes into the game. Things look pretty good for him to continue. But now that Gale Force have taken down the towers and gate, we may see some rotations go out to see if they want to keep pressure up in that top lane, try to take out the fort, or if they want to stop what Glaurung and Buds have been able to do in the bottom and start working on towers there.
Hold up a minute though, Justing's in the wrong side of this one, and with the crowd control being used, the chase is real. It's only inevitable until Roll20 loses themselves a warrior. That is first blood for Gale Force esports. Very well done getting that catch out there. And that's what Gale Force needs to do throughout this game. Murden is going to be the one trying to slow things down so that 2-man can be effective. And if they keep making plays like this on the top half, Roll20 is going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, just as Murden was back up, now Goku falls. There's no support now for Prismaticism up here, and that hurts quite a lot. It lessens what Prismaticism can do, although he is long range of a siege, so he can try to do his best to keep up. But that enables Gale Force to go further with this top lane pressure and start working on the fort.
Very well done for Gale Force esports, and things are prepped so very well for them because we have to be considering what does the game look like when these structures start going down. The early laning phase has been, you know, pretty back and forth so far, but once these top forts start dropping, the bottom forts are going through, eventually Gale Force pulls out ahead by miles by having that double global. It's even worse when we get to 20, which, to be frank, I don't even know if this game will make it to that point if Gale Force keeps doing what they're doing throughout this early stages.
An interesting talent change up for Justing. We already saw him get Perfect Storm, but seeing Reverberation at level 4. The only thing I thought we might get different here would be crowd control as a way of using Muradin to clear out the Zerg Rush more, but instead here getting Reverberation for the increased attack speed debuff all the way to 50% should help a lot with Greymane, especially if he goes for more of a dive-centered go for the throat. We've seen Fan favor that for Gale Force. We don't know if K1 Pro will like to do the same.
I like the talent adjustment a lot, considering not only the damage dealers on the side of Gale Force esports, but we also have to realize why is the other level 4, the standard, going for the double, thunderclap onto the ground, and it's for the synergy that we see with healing static at 13. Being able to get 2 procs of multiple max percentile HP is the staple, but you got double supports backing you up. You have a bit more leeway in the Muradin to still be that beefcake that we know on Braxis hold out here, and so I think it's a really cool adjustment there for Justin, and we'll see if it works out.
Yeah, a lot of times when you see the Thunder Burn and then getting healing static at 13, it's for something like standing on a boss point for a long time when there's a lot of members there. But we'll see what he changes up then at 13 if he continues to get healing static, or maybe get something like a Thunder Strike to do some isolated damage. But speaking of some isolated damage, in the bottom, Glaurung and Buds make quick work of taking out Fan and his Falstad.
And we do see that Energized Cord picked up there at level 7 for the Ariel here of Roll20. That's such it's a talent I adore since the rework here. We're going to be keeping track how many auto attacks, how self-sustaining the Ariel may be now, as Buds is repping it. And also on the same note, when we were talking about which supports playing which, we do see Buds playing the Ariel as the core, so it does feel like Uther is going to be the key of double support in North America, according to that theory I proposed before.
I'm just looking at Prismat's stacks, and I am excited. It's like fish in a barrel with him up in the top lane with 4 members. He's already at 37 stacks, 5 minutes into the game. And he will get his level 8 heroic ability, getting Slowing Sands, pairing that with Mobius Loop, which is the general Prismat standard, so that he can have more Dragon's Breaths up more often for wave clear, for constant harassment damage.
I wonder if the new Chromie, to a certain extent, this strategy that we see Roll20 unfolding is kind of old school Asmondan-esque, right? With this uncapped hero that just needs to buy a bit of time in a certain aspect of the game, but then once they get past that threshold, they are essentially unstoppable. Asmondan is one of the highest, if not the highest damage output character in the game. His burst is unreal. It's just to get to that situation, it takes so much out of a comp, so much out of a team to be able to play the early game in that manner, but this is new, so it's less to bet draft around that fear. It's also plays to the strengths of Roll20. I just don't know if it has as much threat late game as maybe the Asmondan would, but I do think it's still going to be pretty close.
That's what I would say, is it's less of a hurt hard in the early game as Asmondan would be, but late game super threat. Even though generally with Asmondan you see Sieging Wrath a lot more now and not Taste for Blood when you do see an occasional professional Asmondan. But hold on to this thought. Glaurung's in trouble. Vala goes down. Justin still under a lot of damage. King Caffeine burrows in for a body block. Body blocks for days against Justin, but he's still just barely staying alive. Dwarf presses out.
Nice stun.
Yeah, Detainment Strike from Buds, but now Buds is in a terrible spot. And with the fort going down,
Prismat with Lucio max movement speed, Accelerando.
He's drawing him into the time trap. Now he still should be able to get away. Slowing Sands placed in front so he can run through. Prismat, the Chromie god.
He is making the plays here, and that is why we were talking about it from the top to the bottom of that draft. This guy is just absolutely unreal on the little Chromie. You know, what is her surname? Do you know? I actually don't know that one. I was looking for it.
Dragonfly something,
I don't know.
Maybe?
The dragon little girl that throws out sand everywhere. That's what I'm going with here. But for Roll20 here, they're sitting with a 10 advantage now. Going to be able to capture those beacons. We've got some playmaking going on here. Holy cow. Roll20 here has put a lot into this Chromie double support strategy, but now Muradin is relying so much onto those supports. No self-sustain whatsoever in his talent. He is in it to win it.
We look at the beacon progress, though, and 56% belonging to Roll20, and they're getting aggressive. Looking at what we have as heroic abilities for Gale Force, still a consideration of adaptation versus isolation for Dahaka, but it is go for the throat for K1 Pro's Greymane. Everything else as what we would expect, except for, of course, the Haymaker. We'll see how that works out, but I'm loving the idea of the Haymaker. You've got the Slowing Sands you can place behind them, follow up Rain of Vengeance too. It's been Rain of Vengeance almost exclusively now for at least North American Valas, and then even a lot in Korea earlier today too.
Rain of Vengeance, even without the synergy between the, Johanna Condemn that we were talking about before. I like it. She has slowly gotten buffs into that Rain of Vengeance since the release. Hold up here. Flank from Gale Force esports. I thought we might see an immediate cocoon attempt to force that fight because Fan, with applying this pressure up on top, Gale Force is doing the global dance that they do so very well on Braxis holdout. And this is before we've even experienced the Zerg rush.
Yeah, and before both of the forts are down. The one is down, and that's enough of a problem. Falstad's there, and they know that Chromie is trying to defend. This is the place for Gale Force to start to get aggressive and get some of the beacons back. They isolate, glowering away, but Divine Shield will still save him for now.
And he's going to be fine as he kites away. Goku in the front line, lands a stun. Sound barriers drop. The members of Gale Force looking to make a play. Goku gets a heal from Buds. Detainment strike away. And that is all she wrote here. But Dahaka still creeping up on the side, questioning if he wanted to flank. Decides otherwise. He's going to go back to the top lane.
I love this Goku, Bruiser, Uther just all the way up in front. What's up? You don't need Muradin as the tank. I'm here, and if you kill me, I've still got heals for my teammates. It's the perfect pick for Goku. I can't believe I didn't ever think of that one. Goku, Uther.
Goku, Uther, man. Slowly, Goku's becoming Tiger the Tank. You know, everything you put him on, he just looks more and more impressive. Not a hero the guy can't play. Top shrine controlled after Dahaka gets that capture. But a lot of pressure in that top lane, even though the camp was picked up by Roll20. Expect a brush stock here down below. Roll20, though, they're trying to hold on until the 13 talents here. I don't think they're going to be able to. Is Chromie actually getting bodied by the Dahaka?
And Falstad's flying in to try to help out too. Prismatism still stays alive thanks to a time trap and the slowing sands. Prismat survives, but he does have to get back. But the flight was forced. There's no collapse from Gale Force in this bottom lane where the stronghold of Roll20 lives on.
And with that camp pressuring up on top, it might be able to lock down that fort. Pressure going on to K1. He turns it around. Worgen form, dodging the Rain of Vengeance. Nice cue from him. Gale Force esports is fine.
Yeah, and for Gale Force esports, as long as they keep pressure on this bottom beacon, they force Roll20 into this difficult position where Roll20 has to keep some members who can't give this beacon over, but the double global just keeps doing more and more damage to a keep. It is a huge problem for Roll20 at this point, and that is the problem with it. But Rain of Vengeance and the Hungering Arrow build take out Falstad, and that is a moment for Roll20 to try to close out this beacon.
And Mikey Dole popped the adaptation, but got zero value as Roll20 just didn't even put damage into him. He's trying to get the retreat, but that's Prismat on the chase there. You know he's got the damage. Meanwhile, you know, Justin found himself between the members of Gale Force esports in a tough spot. He ended up going down, but Roll20 is the team that comes out on top.
Oh, Chromie is the one who I thought was going to get caught, but it's Goku instead. Gale Force still fine to stay out on this battleground. They know that Falstad will be the one to come back, but a Detainment Strike forces Akaface to use the shield barrier to get King Caffeine back.
Light from Falstad up on top. That'll take the top shrine. Now Gale Force is catching this on bottom, but we've got to keep in mind that though Gale Force is stopping the Zerg rush, this is the equivalent of watching staggered death on Dragonshire. You are not stopping this game in a positive manner with these deaths. You're just merely transferring experience over to your opponent until it is essentially inevitable outside a colossal mistake that they pick up that objective. So I'd like to see Gale Force maybe take a mini here, take a breath, and restore the balance here, because they were very effective with the laning situation, even into the 2-1-2 that Roll20 so cleverly composed here.
Yeah, Roll20 has to get those picks. They have to pick one of the globals would be ideal as a way for them to be able to finally get these beacons. So as long as Gale Force esports has the faster rotations, they're the ones who can still make sure that they're getting something done even in the interim, because they do have those globals. It's up to Roll20 to get picks before they can get the beacons and get the Zerg rush. Gale Force esports catches Goku, who has to Divine Shield himself. Dahaka was coming in. Now Fan's going to fly away, seeing a lot of Roll20 up in the top.
He's going to make it out there, and the Divine Shield being down is something that Gale Force should be looking to capitalize on. In a double support,
look at bot.
To lose that choice, to lose that heroic, you absolutely need to make it happen here. Fan restoring to the double camp and minion pressure up on bottom, but that is way too much free damage onto a keep here. This late in the game with a double global, that is essentially Roll20 just out macroing a Gale Force esports macro focused composition. Brilliant play here from them.
Yeah, they are using that Hungering Arrow build. They send in Glaurung just to make sure that the keep goes down. The first keep taken out by Roll20 against the double global composition of Gale Force, really making every moment, every takedown they get, every pick matter for Roll20 to stay in this game.
And Gale Force esports has got to find a way to change the outcome here, because other than, you know, the first couple of picks that they got onto Roll20, they have really not made much happen here. Roll20 has been the one dictating a pace, and there have been a few picks here and there. Mike Udall's in the chase here. Detainment strike over the wall, not needed, with vision provided by Chromie.
Stormbolt.
Detainment Strike. That was stacked. He can't make it out of this if the cooldown comes back up. He's got a burrow.
Oh, there was still another Rain of Vengeance stack. So many different ways to stall that out, but Goku's been pushed off of this top point while Michael Udall was there. So Gale Force are going to make the best of this bad situation. They've got Falstad in the bottom lane along with the Mercenary Camp. That is where the Zerg Rush will push, and the Zerg Rush is finally closed out in favor of Gale Force esports. They lost to Haka, but in true Gale Force esports fashion, they make sure that they can get something done with that loss.
This has gone to plan for Gale Force esports after that Zerg Rush has been captured, but by no means was that in the typical time frame that we see Gale Force accomplish this first Zerg Rush. This is miles past that, and Roll20's ahead in experience. They're ahead in structures. Yes, Gale Force mission complete. Zerg Rush 100%, but this is, again, is not a normal game for Gale Force, and they have got to feel on the back foot, not as confident as they may be now securing this objective.
And because it was a pretty good Zerg Rush for Roll20 up in the top lane, Gale Force wanted to defend that. They didn't have Dahaka at the start of it. They weren't in position to push along with it. Roll20 got out there with their Monster Hunter Vala and Chromie damage, and they cleared the Zerg Rush out. It didn't even take the fort down. Now Falstad will be back down there hoping to get damage done. The Roll20 are setting up in a position so that they can take down that final fort for Gale Force.
And it's going to be a small window. Once they capture that to pick up the 16, what they make with that 16 happen is really up to them. It's not big enough on a map like Braxis to where you normally can go, all right, here's our major objective, but if they catch themselves a Mike Udall, it might not matter.
Yeah, the Haymaker slowing stands behind it, but adaptation keeps him healthy. Hammer of Justice, Goku is there with a Rain of Vengeance that just barely clips a Dahaka, taking him down. Immediate boss start.
And I just talked about that window and how hard it is to force an objective, but when the boss lands on your lap like this, Roll20 is going to say thank you. They're going to start it up here. 16 just barely out of reach for Gale Force, and that is enough for them not to venture in their 4 versus 5. Boss secured for Roll20.
Gale Force moves back to defend. Roll20 will take everything away from them now in that time where Dahaka's not here and where Gale Force has to defend versus this top push. There is one more camp to get along with this boss, and Roll20 will take it. There's no beacons yet, so we'll see them start out at least sieging along with the boss. There's only one keep left for Gale Force.
And you got to remember, if Gale Force loses that keep, suddenly the double global is no longer an advantage, as both are worried about the catapult pressure, both in bottom. Here up on top, they are just going to be so just oppressed by Roll20's minions and moving onto the map, painting it red, but the keep is now here for this boss. It's unloading, falling below the 60%. We got 20 seconds away from these double altars, and it looks like Roll20, they don't want the keep. They're going to immediately capture double shrine, ticking up that experience. Roll20, they really need to, or excuse me, Gale Force has to abuse their globals right now.
Yes, there is still a mercenary camp in the bottom lane, and Roll20 knew that their Zerg Rush is going to be in the bottom where there is already no keep. This is a good setup for Roll20, and they get some easy beacon progress because it took Gale Force a while to get back out on the map and finally take a beacon away. 24% is such a good place to stop before Gale Force could finally stop it. Now Roll20 can get some more mercenary pressure in the bottom, wait for Dahaka, wait to see where all the globals are, and then re-engage.
Falstad is getting the shrine up on top. Well, you know, maybe not within the window they were hoping so, but he'll get it.
That time trap gave them 4 more %.
Worth? You know, just do it a couple more times, 25, and we'll find ourselves with a, I guess it's less than 25 now as they're at the 28, but it's close enough. Caster math is hard, you know?
I'm proud of you for even attempting it, because I would not.
Thank you, you know. So now, oh, Chromie. Oh, Chromie.
She's got timeout.
But she needs to use it before the drag hits. 7 seconds. Let's see if they can keep it. Divine Shield's up. The Gust didn't push him away. He's got it.
The Divine Shield too.
Rain of Vengeance. Cocoon is used. Sound Barrier drop for Gale Force esports. They need this fight. Buds trying to find a way to reveal. He drops the Aegis, frees it a bit of time, throws down the heal. Justing now, applying pressure, but Glorung is on full retreat. K1 gets the go for the throw. He gets the reset, and Glorung is out of here.
Yeah, the rough thing for Roll20 is that things like Haymaker, not having Avatar for the increased safety for Justing, everything was used defensively for Roll20 early in that fight, but the fight still was better for Roll20 because the core is taking damage. All Roll20 has to do is keep members here, and they have kept them here for a very long time. Finally, Fan gets back, but what will be the final damage before he clears this out? One more Seeker Missile.
Comes in there with 37%. Roll20 as a 5-man could all in that at almost any point. So now Gale Force has to just be perfect with the rotations. They focus on adjusting. Drag lands. Chromie throws out the damage. Not enough to deter Gale Force out of here yet. flash thrown, and that is all she wrote. 34% is what we did conclude as Fan gets the top shrine. Vala is now back onto the battlefield. Gilly, I don't think Gale Force can do this.
I'm just so scared. 34%, and there's already 32% of a Zerg rush for Roll20. They still have something to push in that bottom lane with. Gale Force are going to get Mercenary Camp in the bottom to try to help out, keep the catapults away so that they can get into another fight. They do have that top keep low. If they can at least just wipe a lot of the members of Roll20, this could be an opportunity for Gale Force to take out a keep, but that 34% on a core hurts them so much.
There is another situation that Gale Force might be able to play for, and that's in about 24 seconds we're going to have the boss spawn. If Roll20 ventures as far as to try and make that boss play while the catapults are sieging into the core, they send the globals back and then all in, they have reasonable boss control over Roll20. Not enough to say that they win it, but it's enough to hold their own here.
K1 was the one who was found by Justing, and I got very scared for Haymaker, but thankfully for him, did not come out. Haymaker is now ready for Justing, and Roll20 are getting aggressive in their positioning. Dahaka waffling back and forth, seeing where he needs to go for the beacon.
They're trapping all around this boss like they want to take it afterwards. Mikey Doll's on the backside in this shrub, as you see him using that level 1 passive so effectively.
Goku's going to be found by all of Gale Force, uses Divine Shield immediately just to heal or keep himself alive and kicking. That is one long defensive cooldown that's been used for Roll20 if there is a boss fight.
But luckily for Roll20, there still time is on their side because they have such a big macro pressure advantage over Gale Force, and more importantly, the 34% core. K1 Pro receives a bit of pressure, forces the sound barrier. There's going to be the gust.
But Justing is there too. Glaurung still taking damage. The other Rain of Vengeance comes out, but K1 Pro's ready to go for the throw.
Oh, that
does
heal.
not take out Vala though. Glaurung survives, but now finds himself in a 1v1 with Fan. Thankfully, Buds is there to keep him alive, and Fan is pushed away.
Buds is the true MVP of this fight, constantly keeping Glaurung up to throw out those hungering arrows, and with that, they find the Anubarak, a man down, and Roll20 has 100% Zerg rush and ready to march on to the core of Gale Force esports.
Awesome synergy to know where the Chromie bombs are going to drop, and make sure to keep Anubarak there. That's 40 seconds without the main frontliner of Gale Force esports for this push. This is all or nothing. There is no keep remaining, and Fan is just blown up trying to defend.
Super deleted here. Mike Udall shares the same fate. Gilly, there is just absolutely no chance. Roll20, they started this with 15-1, and they're going to go ahead and put another one under the belt here. 16-1. Taking game 1 on over Gale Force esports on Braxis of all maps.
Yeah, we could continue to say this every time Gale Force loses on Braxis in a best of 5. It feels like it hurts. That feels like it should be the relied upon victory for Gale Force esports, but they'll have to figure that or find that victory somewhere else. Prismaticism ended that game with 74 stacks. Pretty good, pretty impressive on that Chromie. We had some awesome stacking earlier in Europe, too. Schwimpy had something like 120 Ranger stacks. The Sentinels were gross. Just gross.
Owls are one of the scariest stacking spells I think that exists in the game. Just old Tyrande, I was absolutely terrified of the Owl. New Tyrande, I mean, it just kind of puts a new mark on that one. She is just a beast of her own. Nobody likes... She almost becomes Asmodan to a certain extent, right? Like the same threat we were talking about through the whole game. She can really become that type of hero if you are effective with those.
And, you know, we were talking about the Asmodan, but I didn't get to mention, you think about the size of a globe versus the size of the skill shot of Sandblast. Yeah, Sandblast has a very low cooldown, so you can continue to shell them out, but the globe has a little bit of wiggle room because it's so big. You can just drop it on the whole minion wave and maybe hit a lot of people, especially in sieging. So great job by Prismat for his team, but we're going to talk about some other players. We're looking at the side laning players, Goku versus Michael Udall. Goku has slightly more takedowns, slightly fewer deaths, but a way larger KDA ratio.
Goku, man. I mean, you can just say the guy's Super Saiyan, really. He has risen through the North American scene. He finds himself standing near the top, if not on the very top here. The numbers show it. His gameplay shows it. I have never seen a player grow as much as this guy right here on the right-hand side of this. It is just ridiculous what he's been able to show. Confidence is showing as well. Dropping the interviews, saying he's willing to decimate Gale Force esports. Everything here is just, he's a new player for me.
Even saying that they could go as far as to 3-0 Gale Force esports. That is no easy feat, my friends, but having a lot of confidence in himself, in his new team, and Roll20 having a lot of confidence in him, even putting him on Uther last game.
Yeah.
As fun as that was, I want his mouth ale back. I want to see the new Leoric with him. I want some Goku-styled heroes.
And I mean, we hype up Goku a lot because he is an outstanding player, but we talked about Roll20. We didn't think they would be the team to venture into double support, and Goku was the one kind of filling that off role and moving into that. Let's be honest here, wasn't maybe the most outstanding performance by him. 2 of his Divine Shields were very effective. One of them was essentially impossible to mess up and be effective as long as he's in range, which he was. And then all the other ones were on himself being out of position. So there's still a lot of growth to be done in that side role. I mean, to be frank, if that we're going to go, the best of the world, erase the names, and that double support performance, I would say very beatable. So there is still room to grow, but it's a double support, and it is a weird role for him in general, not his play style. And Roll20 still made it work, right? Their team fight prowess is just able to make up for that, which again shows the strength of Roll20.
Yeah, it's even just a little bit different because you wouldn't see a double support feature a double range, but that kind of is the Braxis holdout effect. Let's see where we're going next and see if maybe a double support would still be